Thank you so much, Terry. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to start us off by just kind of giving you like the trailer, the highlights for what we're going to cover in this workshop webinar thing. And then we're going to have a little poll, actually. So we'll start with the poll, and then we will talk a little bit about the research that is out there about online discussions, what makes them effective, what makes them less effective, and how we as educators can avoid those pitfalls. And then we're going to focus our conversation on three different motivations or purposes behind a discussion board assignment. We'll talk about why you might use that kind of a discussion board prompt in your course, some suggestions for how to make it work for you, and also some ideas for prompts. We will be talking about AI. Spoiler alert, you can't just avoid it. But we do have some suggestions on how to make your discussion prompts more AI resistant. That's the term that we're going with for this. Okay, so let's start with a poll. I am just now launching. Okay, so there should be a poll just directly in Zoom. And there are two questions to that poll. The first one asks, why do you use online discussions? And you probably have would select multiple of these responses. So I would say just choose the option that is the most correct, even though it's not the only correct one. So our options, we have to check students' understanding of the content, to encourage application, to build a learning community / student connections, to encourage idea sharing between students, to facilitate peer feedback. Somebody told me I had to, or other. And then the second question is, what is the biggest challenge that you're currently facing with discussion board assignments? Again, just choose the most correct answer for your courses and your experiences. Options are a lack of student participation. It's too time consuming to both participate in the discussions as a moderator and also to grade them. Low quality responses from students. It can be difficult to come up with high quality discussion prompts. Cheating, most commonly through, them putting the prompt in ChatGPT and then pasting what it comes up with. And then other, we'll just give it another, I don't know, 20 seconds if you haven't already answered. And then we're going to take a look at those results. I feel like I should have prepped the Jeopardy music. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and we're going to take a look at these results. So for the first question, why do you use online discussions? We have a tie between building a learning community and student connections and to encourage idea sharing. Before I kind of talk about that a little bit, does anybody want to share some of their experiences, things that they've tried that have been really successful, or activities that they've done that they thought was really rewarding? Anybody want to share any experiences with the positives?
I'll share one. Since
Great.
these are new master's classes that were just developed, and Kevin created 4 scenarios for our HR management, human resource management section of this management leadership course. And the scenarios are a nurse leader who is interviewing 4 candidates, and these 4 candidates are very diverse. And so the students in their discussion had to look at their resumes, and then they watched this little video clip of the interview. And it was all AI generated. So Kevin was very helpful, but I actually had the students, and then they had to identify why they would hire which individual. And it was interesting, out of the 13 students, they all would hire a different candidate. And so it allowed them to have a discussion as to why they selected a certain candidate, because not everyone, I had one that I thought was like the standout candidate.
Yeah.
And I even kind of tweaked everything so that there was a really good, qualified, interviewed well candidate, excellent resume. And then there was one that, the resume was loosely put together. They had some interviewing problems and stuff. But it was interesting to see the class come together with oh, this is why I would hire this person. And they were all different. They all picked
Mhm.
out of the 4 candidates, all 4 candidates would have been hired, depending on who the leader was. But the students actually commented that that was probably the most fun discussion they've ever done, and they found it very engaging.
Thank you so much, Vicky. That is a great example of an application type of a discussion, which we're going to talk about, and also of, building those student connections. I love the way that you had an open prompt. There were, a reasonable person might disagree, and they did disagree. And so that really contributed to that sense of discussion. And it wasn't everybody just being like, I agree. Me too. That was cool. Because, like, we all hate those. What are you supposed to do with that? I also love that you used those videos, because that is a fantastic example of making a chat GPT resistant assignment. um I guess theoretically they could have uploaded the video to chat GPT and then analyze it from there, but like honestly, if I was a student, that sounds like more work than just doing the assignment. So snaps to Vicky. Okay, our second question was, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing with discussion board assignments? And the winner, not even close, is low quality responses from students. Um, that's definitely a challenge with discussion boards. And we're going to talk a little bit later about some strategies that you can use to try and help them come up with better, higher quality responses. So it's not just, a feedback loop of, yeah, me too, or that was great, or I liked it. That is not a conversation. That's just the cycle of patting each other on the back. Okay. So next up, Sheen is going to talk to us about some of the research that kind of discusses this topic. In the chat, I just shared a link, and it's going to ask you to enroll in a course. If you came to Huck's presentation a few weeks ago, it's the same one. And so you shouldn't need to enroll again. But I'll just take a minute or two, I don't know, 30 seconds for everybody to get to the course. And we are going to be focusing on the second module, which is the title of our presentation, Building Dynamic Student Discussion in Online Student Courses, or Online Courses, excuse me. And we'll start with that introduction page. And in fact, I am going to just share my screen as well. Maybe. There we go. We want. Okay,
Give
Sheen.
us a, could you please give us a thumb up in the chat so we know you're there? You get into the course with no problem? So all our materials for today will be hosted in this course. So you have this, then you can come back anytime after the webinar to refer back to the content if needed. And it looks like most people already get in there. And before in this, like Sarah said, in this webinar, we're going to share some specific strategies and examples. But before we jump into that, let's take a moment to look at what research says about benefits and challenges of online discussion. For this webinar, we will focus on asynchronous online discussions, just so you know the context of that. So a literature review I found talking about create a summary of the benefits and challenges of using online discussion board. The benefits, including students, is more flexible for students, enable them to think more critically, have more time to reflect on their answers. It can involve the more introverted students who find it more challenging to participate in in-person discussions, or also facilitates peer learning by enabling students to see each other's responses. So that's the main benefits there. Of course, there are challenges, and we all may have experienced this at some point in our online teaching. Like in our poll, you notice that your students, the lack of student participation and engagement that result in the poor quality of the responses. And some instructors will feel like creating a prompt that foster high-level critical thinking is difficult. And some instructors will feel like how often or not often that I should participate or involve in the conversation, in the discussion board, how to determine the level of type of instructor involvement in the conversation. And also students feel disconnected and misunderstanding the responses due to lack of emotional cues. Those are the benefits and challenges identified and summarized by some researchers. And due to these benefits and especially challenges, what are the best practices to design the effective online discussions? Here, this author provides 4 suggestions. One is communicate purpose and expectations, then set structures for discussion, create effective question prompt, and facilitate discussion effectively. Specifically, under each best practices, this author draw from previous research, make a list of teaching strategies. For example, communicate purpose and expectations. When you design an online discussion, try to communicate the purpose and importance of discussion, make it more relevant to students, more clear to students that it's relevant to what their academic learning and also maybe future career. So make them feel like more interested in participate. Also, we recommend, and I think most of the online instructors are utilizing rubrics to outline expectations so students know what they're being evaluated on. Now for set structures, set multiple deadlines, which is important to encourage more smooth participation, and also consider alternative structures to the threaded discussions, such as like Vicky shared, involve multimedia, scenario, role play, debate, those type of things, and create effective questions. Usually divergent questions are better because they allow multiple perspectives instead of convergent questions. And also they are here mentioned like utilize creative approaches like role play, debate. Also can ask students to self-assess their own responses by providing them the guidelines and rubrics. For instructors, when you facilitate discussion, you want to let students know you are there and you're with them, but you should avoid over involvement so that you don't dominate the discussion. And when you contribute to the discussion board, focus on providing, like pointing out themes, highlighting important posts, correcting inaccurate posts, or summarizing the conversation. Then you also can consider to encourage more student participation by assigning different roles, like a starter, a devil's advocate, reporter, that kind of thing, and student can rotate their roles. Of course, you need to have a very clear defined roles for student so student know what they're supposed to do and model what it should look like in the course, so student have knows your expectation. The next section will summarize or sum up tips on crafting effective online discussions. The first one is make it personal. Just encourage students to share, explore personal experiences. Then student definitely can fabricate these responses, but because it's relevant and to them, they're more likely and eager to share their real stories, real experience in the discussion board. And less is more means like limit the length of format of responses. Sometimes some instructors ask students to post like 500 or more words responses in the discussion board. Most of the time, the student will feel like it's kind of the workload is very, very intimidating for them. We want research shows that the more participated and engaging discussion tend to be shorter, tend to be more personal, and tended to be more focused on a couple of questions instead of a very long, lengthy list of questions. And of course, integrate multimedia formats. You don't have to feel like you need to use text-based replies. You can encourage students or ask them to answer the questions or discuss through videos, collage, graphics, concept maps, those type of things. Also, that next one is promote creativity. For more creative works, it's harder for AI to mimic authenticity authentically. So encourage them to use their imaginations and by providing hypothetical scenarios, role plays. For example, if you are teaching history, you can ask them to role play as a historical figure and try to talk, behave, and discuss historical matters from that person's perspective. The last one, but not least, is test your prompt in generative AI. You can take the opportunity to experiment with the tools yourself and copy paste your discussion prompt to the AI and see how the AI reacts to that, whether it's easier for it to give you very decent answers. Then you can encourage students to do the same thing and reflect on their answers and responses and the AI generated ones. So those are some tips we summarized from the research we did on here. Actually is a question for you. Based on your experience, is the following discussion prompt a very effective one? Yes or no? And if you're using this in your course, what would you like to change for this discussion prompt to make it more effective based on your experience? So the discussion prompt is, what are the major challenges facing US healthcare and what should be done to address them?
Why don't we
And I,
put, oh, why don't we just have you put in the chat a thumbs up or a thumbs down? And like, but also like, let's talk about it too.
yeah, kind of have an example, I think. Do you want me to share?
Yeah, please
So in
do.
my course, my my course is public speaking, and so I have them post. It's kind of hard, right, in an online class to publicly speak, and so I have them obviously post their videos of them speaking the discussion, so they know that people are going to be viewing it, right? And then I have them do peer reviews and self reviews. And so in the peer review, I kind of cheated because I saw the revised version of this particular question where it says on pages 47 and 48 of the textbook. I think that's a lot harder. I think that's a lot easier or a lot harder for AI to mimic correctly. The reason I say that is because I've actually tested it multiple times, and I'm sure that there are some that can do it, but I've tested different AIs to see if they can pull up my textbook, to see if they can get in there, to see if they can like find information in my textbook for multiple reasons, and it seems a lot harder for some of these AIs to do that. I guess it depends on your textbook as well, but it's really obvious when the students are making specific comments about speeches, about their speech, about their peer speech, or the questions like when they're reviewing and they're using terms like, oh, in chapter 8 we talk about nonverbal communication, and so at that point, obviously they still might have used AI to make their prompt or to make their response sound more professional. But I feel like I can tell when someone has entered something in that's theirs, if that makes sense. And so I think using specific things like from the textbook or something like that make it a lot harder. It makes them actually have to respond, right? It's kind of so that's I like that in the revised version it uses the textbook as an example. I've kind of done that as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Brett. Anybody else want to share their experiences with discussion prompts or ask any questions about the content that we have covered so far? Okay, then let's hop over to our first reason why you might assign a discussion board assignment. This was one of the two top reasons from our poll for why people use or why you might have used these in the past. Connection and relationship building. We know how important it is to build a connection with your students, build relationships, facilitate that. I've got my, my public school brain working, but like the classroom community, it's really important in an in-person situation, and it is important in an online course as well. So this page has some suggestions and ideas for how you can improve or how you can make discussion board prompts that are going to achieve that goal. Our first recommendation is to keep it low stakes. If you have an assessment where the entire goal is for them to get to know each other or something like that, research does show that it's good to have grades attached to a discussion board assignment. But for something like this, you're going to want to make it like super, super low stakes. One of the examples, it's a peak of the week assignment, and I'll leave that for you to browse on your own time, but that one is only 2 points. We just don't want them to be stressing out, oh, this is worth 50 points. There must be some big thing about it. There must be a right answer. In your participation in these kinds of discussions, model what you are okay with and what you want them to share. And if you're fine with them being silly or cracking jokes or sharing pictures, do the same thing. That way they'll know, all right, these kinds of assignments are a little more casual. I don't have to stress so much about it. I don't have to try and be so formal. And then also have fun. If you are trying to build relationships, this is not the time to be focused on, are you supporting your claim with evidence? Are you answering the right questions, asking the right questions? By kind of lowering the stakes, it can take the pressure off. So we have a few ideas that you could potentially use for prompts in a discussion where the goal is for them to get to know each other. First one is, classic, get to know you. One option that you might try is, instead of the standard questions, where are you from? What are you studying? What do you hope to become in your career? Along with those, maybe toss in like some fun, hilarious, like, my brain keeps saying spicy questions, but I don't mean like that. um, Questions. Some of the funnest conversations that I ever had with my students when I was in the classroom are things like, would you rather be a reverse mermaid where you're fish on top, human on bottom, or a reverse centaur where you're human on top, no, horse on top, human on bottom? We spent 50 minutes, an entire class period, on that debate, and it was so much fun. So sometimes, even if it feels a little bit like, ugh, give it a shot. You never know what's going to work. You never know what's going to build that bridge. There's a link to some get to know you questions, 425 of them. Would you rather is also a good fallback, especially if it's something that people care a lot about, like pineapple on pizza or are birds real? You can tell that I spent a lot of time with 14-year-olds. Okay, next one is let me explain, where you can ask them to create a brief presentation about something they know way too much about. Two truths and a lie, that one's a classic. And then a dream job scenario. Regardless of whatever you choose, whether it's one of these or one that you come up with on your own, the most important thing is to be authentic to yourself. Students are going to know if you just, pull something out of a list and it is not in alignment with who you are, what you're like as a person. So if asking a question like, would you rather be a reverse centaur or a reverse mermaid, is not in alignment with who you are, don't do it. It's going to feel weird. They're going to pick up on it. Do what's going to fit with you as a person. Down here, we have a couple of suggestions for what you could do to incorporate AI, just embracing the beast, or resisting AI. You could ask ChatGPT to write a short biography of your life, give it some brief bullet points, and then see what it comes up with, and then leave some commentary. What did you like about what it came up with? What was completely off the mark? And then the students can critique those biographies. One thing that's nice about that is that students are critiquing a machine. It's not a person, so they don't have to necessarily feel like, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. It's just a robot, the computer. Similar thing would be a chat GPT collage. You can tell chat GPT or whatever AI that you like. I'm using chat GPT as like Kleenex, the brand name. So talk about your hobbies and interests, and then ask it to create a collage that represents you. And then again, critique it, talk about it, give it some backstory. For resisting AI, one thing that you could try, and that's one of the sample discussions that you can kind of look through, is a peak of the week. Ask them to share the best thing that they did in the last week, the best thing they watched, the best thing they read, whatever. If you do it consistently, then it can really, and as opposed to just the first discussion board assignment, it can really help build that sense of community and people getting to know each other. This one, yeah, sure. They could absolutely do that in ChatGPT. They could just say, hey, talk about something that was cool that a person might do over the weekend. But that just seems lame. Like, it's lame in the sense that really you can't come up with anything that you did that you liked, even if it was, you know, I had a really good pizza with my friends. Like, come on. Um, but also it's lame because it's gonna be obvious that a person didn't write it, and you just put in more work to have ChatGPT do this than if you just did it on your own. Another option could be asking them to record their responses in a video format. Brett gave us a great example of how that worked out really well for his public speaking class. And then another one of the examples that we have on this Canvas page is, you know, a pretty standard get to know you assignment, but the instructor chose to use a video as the vehicle for their posts. Um, just for the sake of time, I think I'm going to skip over these discussion questions. But do you have any comments, questions, anything that has come up so far with this type of discussion board assignment? Okay, great. I'm going to skip past the sample discussions. Feel free to look through them on your own. You, as Terry said, you'll have access to this after this is over. So feel free to look through them and see if there's anything that you might want to try for yourself. Okay, Sheen, I think we're ready for application.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. So next type of discussion we identified an application. This type has been used a lot in our online courses, and you can read through the content. I just wanted to highlight a couple of ideas here. I think it's worth trying if you haven't done that yet. The first one is in idea prompt problem solving. Is like instead of you give students questions, you ask students to come up with their own questions. So they solve each other's questions. In order to design hypothetical questions or problem, they have to understand the content. They have to learn on their own, then come up with good questions. Of course, you need to provide guidelines on what type of questions you're looking for. And when they look at each other and solve each other's problems, they motivate them to go back to see what their questions has been answered and solved. That create that kind of a more active participation. The other one I wanted to highlight is content analysis, which is really, it's kind of similar like what Wiki has shared. Choose a current recent news and advertisement, TV show scenes, a social media post, ask them to apply the concept covered in the course to critically analyze it. For example, if you teach political science, you can ask students to analyze one political campaign ad and fact check that and see whether it is actually saying putting the false claims there, those kind of things. And if you work in the hospital operations, then you can choose a popular hospital a TV show scene, ask the student to analyze whether the scene is realistic or not, and what is going to happen in real world, what is the dramatic version of that. Then we do have examples of this also too for organizational behavior course we designed with Dr. Chris Healy, which is in the example, and she asked the students to analyze the Shrek, a clip of Shrek's, identify different characters' personalities, and apply the behavior models on those characters, which is super fun. It not only it's application assignment, but also it brings the enjoyment and entertainment into learning. Yeah. For incorporating AI and resisting AI, I think I want to highlight the resisting AI one. Just get out into the community, if applicable. Consider asking to apply what they have learned in their immediate community. Ask them to document the process. So they can now just use generative AI to come up with answers. And the process is more important than the result for this type of assignment. Yeah, considering the time, I will skip the discussion question 2. Maybe we move on to next idea sharing. Then after that, we'll take questions.
Okay. Thank you, Sheen. So for idea sharing, I would say that the most important factor, if you are creating a discussion board assignment, that the goal is to have them share ideas with each other, whether it's teaching each other or giving each other some support or peer reviews or what have you. It's really critical here that you explain why. You explain the purpose. Why am I asking you to do this? How is this going to help you? What is the vision for this assignment? That way they don't kind of get sidetracked. Well, it can help them avoid getting sidetracked is if they know what you are wanting from them to take away from this experience. Rubrics are going to be really helpful here, whether it's rubrics for how they're going to be assessed here, but also if you are asking them to evaluate each other, giving them a rubric can be a really helpful guideline. It can help steer them away from just, it was good, because if they are giving specific reasons for why it was good or specific suggestions for how they can improve, it's going to be a lot more useful to their peers if they have that resource. And also it can be helpful for them in crafting their own responses. Help them think about, am I fulfilling the requirements of this assignment? Providing examples of, do's and don'ts can be really helpful here. We have, again, some ideas that you could potentially adopt in your online courses. Current events, sharing suggestions. This can be helpful if you're dealing with a concept that's pretty complex and a lot of students are having the same problem with. Maybe use that. If you're getting an email with the same question, why not post it as a discussion board prompt and see what your students come up with? What have they done that can help that problem? What have they tried to try and fix this issue? Peer reviews, they're great, they're helpful. And then also jigsaw learning. If you use this specific format, it will probably be most beneficial if you assign them their topic. That way you don't just have, everybody choosing the easiest one and then, okay, how are you supposed to respond to that? Okay. Again, I'm gonna just jump to resisting AI because I think that's probably the more light or more useful for this discussion here. One thing that they could do is they can interview a classmate. It can be about their experiences with the course. It can be about their understanding of the course. It can, or a topic that has to do with your course. Having that can, again, ChatGPT probably can come up with something, but it will be vague, it will be general, it will be nonsense, and it will be really clear really quick. Similar to the first kind of motivation that we went over, video presentations, they can be great. For example, if you are having to do a jigsaw type of assessment or discussion board question, instead of having them type what they're learned about or what have you, maybe they could create a video of them presenting about the topic or a slideshow, or they could use chat or AI to create like a training video or something like that. But either way, it can be just a refreshing way to kind of go about this same issue. I think, and then like the others on this module, there are some samples that you are welcome to look through and adapt if you find them to be helpful. We have some time dedicated now for Q&A. So if you have any questions or if you'd like to ask anything, Sheen and I are here. And also, you know, the rest of us are here, can kind of share some ideas if I may.
I'll jump in with a quick question. So when we talk to online students, one of their biggest complaints is about discussions. Sometimes they feel like there are too many in a course. Others, I know I've received feedback from a student athlete who didn't like the deadlines because she had tournaments on the weekends. She would want to get a head start on her discussion post. So she would post early and then wait for her classmates to post before she could reply to their posts. And so the timing of discussions was difficult for some students. The deadlines were difficult for some students, and just the amount of discussions were difficult. Do you have any ideas on that? And by the way, the content of this and having it be available to us as a reference on Canvas is wonderful.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate your perspective as someone who works a lot with the data from student feedback. That's a really important and valuable consideration. I would say that if there's not an immediate reason for them to be talking about this topic, don't do it. They know when it's busy work. They know when, you know, you're asking them to do something to fill time or whatever. It's much better to have fewer high quality discussion board assignments than one every week for the sake of having one every single week. That would be my recommendation. Sheen, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Online discussion is a tool, but not the only tool in online courses. If you don't feel student will benefit from this discussion, you don't have to incorporate in your teaching. And also regarding to the multiple deadlines, I feel like if you wanted to, one way I can think of now is you can try to gamify the discussion board by, if they post like within 24 hours of the others' responses, give them extra 1 point. If 48, give them extra 1 point. Or you can do some leaderboard, like gamification way to present who is this week, who is the fastest one, and who is the more thoughtful one, and who is most informative one, and present a leaderboard every week. That will give them some extra motivations. We know everybody is motivated differently, but for that little accountability and competition may encourage some of your students to respond like more responsive to other students and watch out for the quality of their answers too. That's another thing I can think of. So
Yeah. No, I love that idea of gamification. The only thing that I would add to that is just, if you're doing a leaderboard or, most valuable player or whatever, I would make extremely clear what about the post merited that award. Maybe you have a rubric, maybe you share the post and then highlight the pieces that led you to that award, but you're going to want to be really clear about it, because that can help them with future responses. They can say, oh, I'm going to try, what Jimmy did when he cited his evidence, and I'm going to get that award this time, type whatever. Any other thoughts or questions about discussion board assignments?
I have one. Maybe I just need your suggestions. So I'm thinking about my course, and it's like a pretty simple 1 credit course, typically freshman, sophomore,
Mm.
kind of trying to decide what they want to major in or have as a career. So I'm kind of thinking of just like the purpose of discussion, and it is to build community and idea sharing. But I'm thinking of some of my discussion posts, and I do a check for understanding too. And so that's when some of my you know, my expectations aren't met, because I'm like, okay, I'm glad that they're, sharing ideas and they're like getting to know each other, and it's an online course, right? But then I'm also looking for that understanding of the content and kind of asking them to reflect. So do you suggest I really like change my approach? And if I am doing that, check for understanding, like have it be an assignment, it can still kind of be low stakes, and then just like separate and keep the discussions, like you said, like really community building and idea sharing? How, I don't know, what do you think? And it's a easy 1 credit course, so am I overthinking things, which is usually the case?
You're in good company, because I'm a big overthinker myself. One thing that I found that was interesting in the research as we were putting together this workshop is that research has shown that discussion boards are not an effective tool for assessing understanding. It can be, long story short, there's better ways. So what I personally would suggest would be separating them, having the discussion board assignments being for community building or sharing ideas, but that aren't necessarily ones that are a right or a wrong answer, and then us checking their understanding in a separate assessment, especially if these are freshmen, sophomores. These kids had their public school interrupted by COVID. Um, these kids that are coming in now are a new beast. I can tell you right now. So they need a lot of help. They need a lot more help than students in the past did. And so I would recommend just kind of separating them so that it's easier for you to identify, oh, where are they missing the mark here? Where do I need to support you? Sheen, do you have any other thoughts to add?
Yeah, I agree with Sarah says, and if I have to add something, it's like I think it's okay for have slightly different perspective. I think it's okay for one discussion board to have different purposes. It can be because while we are working together, then it's relationship building in some sense. So it depends on how designed the prompt actually. And I agree with Sarah that checking understanding, there are many good ways doing that. And if you think the way you check the understanding will cause students to answer exact similar responses, that's probably not a good way to use discussion. But if you have diverse, you can imagine students contribute understanding from diverse perspective. For example, if you do scenario analysis, they are also sharing understandings on that. But they probably have different ways of interpret the situation. Some legal dilemmas kind of thing. They're still sharing their understanding of this issue, but there are different ways to answer or interpret the situation. So in that case, I think it's okay to combine the relationship building and the checking understanding.
Yeah, I really like that, Sheen. I think that choosing the correct type of prompt for the goal for the week or the module or whatever is going to be really key in that situation.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments or? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. On that introductory page, Sheen's email and my email are available if you want to ask a question or ask for some feedback or just brainstorm ideas, feel free to reach out to us.